Hello, thank you for joining. I am super excited. This is kind of a last minute fat loss cohort call because we were supposed to have our call next week for our bi-weekly schedule, and then that would have put us on New Year's Day. So we decided instead to do a call today and do a call next week and then take Christmas Eve and New Year's Day off. So hopefully, however, well, actually, I was going to say that would put us on New Year's Day, but the cohort ends on the 22nd. So Thanksgiving made it a little bit crazy. And we wanted to get in two calls before we ended the cohort, not just one. Which I cannot believe. We are coming to the end of the cohort, coming to the end of a calorie deficit. So on this call, I wanted to talk through like transitioning back to maintenance and what that looks like. On next week's call, we'll probably do kind of some more of the same as well as like expectations moving forward. So for those of you that are on the call live, I would love to answer, like, have this be kind of a just like a working phone call where I answer any questions you have, because if you have them, everyone else does too. So hopefully you feel comfortable to we can just chat and you guys can ask questions. If you're like working and have a question but can't talk directly to me, then feel free to put them in the chat and I will answer those in the chat. But otherwise, I'll start with kind of like what was submitted, and then I'll answer questions from there. So, and yes, I am so glad. I just realized we took it was Thanksgiving off, and then I was like, oh no, I want to make sure we get in those two calls before we finish. So hopefully no one minds. I feel like the more calls, the better. But I'm also on the same timeline as everyone. I am kind of wrapping up my calorie deficit next week as well. I will be doing a DEXA scan. This is a crazy time of year well, I mean, any time of year can be crazy, but really like October, November, December can be really crazy to do a calorie deficit because we have Halloween, we have Thanksgiving, then we have Christmas. And so we also just have, for those of us that are moms, a lot of us have maybe kids in extracurriculars. For us, like fall sports is crazy. I've also traveled a lot this fall season, which has been great, but also challenging for a calorie deficit. And so I think sometimes it can feel like, oh, maybe you didn't accomplish like as much as you wanted in this specific calorie deficit. I think there will be different levels of those that just crushed it, those that maybe tried to implement a calorie deficit and it was not the right timing at all, and you've just gone to maintenance, and those that are somewhere in between. And if you're one of those people that are somewhere in between where you've lost some weight, maybe you haven't lost as much as you had hoped, but it's been a really busy season, I want you to applaud yourself, because it can be so easy to feel like, ah, I didn't reach my goal. But on the flip side of that, I think it would be really, really easy for you to have gained weight in this season. So by like focusing and having a calorie deficit, and maybe you haven't been perfect with it, has probably allowed you to lose weight in a season that maybe would have been really challenging to even maintain your weight have you not been intentional. So I think there's so much to be said for being really intentional and doing your best, and knowing that that is going to yield way better results than if you did not put intention into this effort. So there will always be spring. I think now is a good time, even if you maybe, let's say you plan on losing 10 pounds and you only lost 5. Maintaining that through Christmas in January is going to allow you to have some flexibility, take off a lot of the mental load that can come with the fat loss phase, trust yourself in coming back to maintenance and optimizing intake there, and feeling so much better energy wise, having more flexibility socially, all those things. And then knowing you can lose those next 5 pounds, maybe implement a calorie deficit in April, which we will actually be having another fat loss cohort in April, which you could totally join then. And between now and then, focus on maintaining the weight that you've lost and continuing to optimize on your habits so that when you implement another calorie deficit in the future, it is easier even to do so. You have more tools in your tool belt to implement and can just use the foundation that you have built during this cohort, and then as you continue refining your habits. So hopefully for those of you that are kind of in that place, that gives you a little bit of reassurance and you applaud yourself for seeing fat loss in a busy time of year for most people. So this question is, let me actually fix this formatting really quick. Okay, so someone put on here, as we move toward maintenance and macros are adjusted, do we approach our goals the same? For example, try to hit 10% of our calories and 10% of our protein and let carbs and fats fall where they may. Yeah, yes, absolutely. I think it can be so easy when you are coming out of a calorie deficit to just like let it all go and be like, okay, awesome, I can eat whatever I want now. Because I'm at maintenance and it's fine. And that's where a lot of people end up regaining a lot of the weight that they've lost. So being very intentional, reversing your calorie intake up. And that's something that we can provide you with guidance on. As far as the reverse process goes, that's going to come down to like how much into your calorie deficit you are. If you've done a couple calorie drops, then you're going to want to kind of stair step your way back up. That's usually the best method. So if you are, let's say, 500 calories down, then I would probably come up 300 calories like week 1 as you're moving out of your calorie deficit. And then really continue, and that those calories are going to come from carbs and fats because our protein intake is already optimal. So bringing carbs and fats up so that you have a 300 calorie increase. Usually I just split that evenly between carbs and fats. So you can kind of just like mess with that on MyFitnessPal. That's pretty easy to do yourself. If you need help with that, let us know. Bringing that up 300 calories and then stay there for 2 to 3 weeks. Continue to take measurements, record your weight, look at that data and see, are you maintaining there? If you are, then I would bump up another 150 to 200 calories so that you are now at where you were pre-deficit. Knowing you might not be able to bring it up all the way 500 calories because you're probably at a lower body weight now. So maintaining the lower body weight is going to likely require less calories than maintaining your pre-fat loss weight, right? So once you bump up the 300 calories, then I usually will kind of split the middle, like maybe coming up 150 calories, not quite the full 200, and seeing how your body responds there. And then you might be able to push even beyond like what your previous maintenance intake was. And how you know that is just coming up about 50 calories at a time and then giving it a couple weeks, seeing where weight is trending. If it's maintaining, bump it up another 50 calories and continue to do so until weight starts to trend up. Then you know, okay, I'm in a calorie surplus. I'll bring it back down, maybe 50 to 100 calories, and I'll stay there. Now is a really, really good time to do that. And if you are tracking as you reverse and you're tracking in the beginning of maintenance, it will allow for you to just get a really good idea, like visually, of what maintenance looks like for you throughout the day. How many meals is that? Is that a snack? What is the size of your meals? What do your plates look like? How does that feel throughout the day? So you have the data and then you are starting to be more intuitive and paying attention to how that all feels. And then you can transition to a more flexible approach where maybe you just track like one weekday, one weekend. Maybe you track a couple days one week and then not the next week. Maybe you just track when you feel like it. I think being able to move into not tracking at all, or maybe just tracking your protein intake, is ideal for most people, but tracking your food as you reverse and then tracking your food for like a month or so when you're maintaining is going to set you up for the best success in that way so that you understand what your maintenance intake feels like. So that's what I would recommend. And then is it a good strategy to eat in a deficit on non-workout days, on rest days, and eat at maintenance on workout days? I would assume it would equal out to maintenance calories if you average it out. So that's hard to answer because that's going to be different for everyone, right? So if I work out 3 days a week and or 4 days a week or 5 days a week or 6 days a week, then my rest days are going to be, not averaging out to maintenance if I'm only eating in a deficit maybe 2 days a week versus 4 days a week, vice versa. So I personally I probably wouldn't do this strategy. I would more so think through how I want to structure my calories based on maybe events in my week and like meal preferences. So for me, I lift 3 days a week and I do cardio 3 days a week. So that equates to 6 total days of like exercise in my week. Um, and I generally don't like to change up my calorie intake based on my training because if I have a rest day, for me, I'm still recovering from the day before. So I personally don't want to lower my calories just because it's a rest day because my body's recovering and my hunger is usually up for that reason. In fact, I would probably feel better doing lower calories the day after a rest day than I would on a rest day for that reason. Like coming off of a rest day, I'm not as hungry. So everyone's going to be a little bit different there. And then also for me, when I have a rest day, I have more free time. So I have more time to like, oh, I kind of want to have a snack. Where if I have a pretty solid training day, I'm not thinking about food as much because I have a lot of other things going on. I'm just not as snacky. And not everyone is that way. So I would go more off of your own hunger cues and then also your schedule. Um, I might have like a really, really busy day in my week. Maybe that is a rest day or maybe it's not. And I might want to take advantage and bring my calorie intake down on that day so that I can have higher calories on the weekend, and still average out to whatever I want to hit for the week, whether that's in a deficit or at maintenance. I use the strategy in both scenarios. So maybe if I have, let's say, 2,000 calories is like my average that I want to be at. I might take Wednesday. I have lots of meetings on Wednesday. I have a workout or I don't. But like food is a little harder for me to make happen. I might just plan to have protein and veggies, 3 meals a day, and bring my calorie intake down like 400 calories, let's say on that day. So I'm at 1,600 calories instead of 2,000. And then on Friday or Saturday, when I want to go out to eat and just have more flexibility, I might bring up my calories 400 calories. So I'm at 2,400 calories that day. And the rest of the week, I'm at 2,000. Or another strategy that I have implemented is being at maybe 100 calories lower than my weekly average 5 days a week. I love the 5-2 method where I'll go 100 calories lower 5 days a week. So in this 2,000 calorie scenario, I'd be at 1,900 calories Monday through Friday or Sunday through Thursday. And then 2 days a week, I would have an additional 500 calories that I would split between the 2 days. So that would be 250 extra calories one day, 250 the other day, or however I want to split that up, which would put me at 2,250 on, one of the weekend days and 2,250 on the other with 1,900 on the rest. So those are just some different strategies that I've implemented, hitting my weekly average instead of just like hoping it works out and doing lower on my rest days and maintenance on my training days. I prefer to just do the math on it and figure out, okay, what's my weekly average that I want to hit? What do I have going on this week that I want to be flexible for? About how many calories more do I want? And then how do I want to structure my week? Do I want to do one really low calorie day that I'm not going to really notice because the rest of the week is kind of normal? Or do I want to do a little bit lower all the other days of the week to make up for that calorie surplus day? So that's personally how I would structure it. But really, my best advice would be to try a couple different methods and see what works best for you. Maybe on your rest days, you really aren't hungry. So maybe taking advantage of that, hitting protein, hitting vegetables, but keeping those more calorically dense foods low and taking advantage of them on your training days, really fueling your training sessions. That's not a bad idea. I would rather see you think about just kind of your schedule and your preferences. And then as far as fueling your workouts, like putting your carbs around your training, whether that's on a higher calorie day or not, just kind of making sure your training has you have your glycogen storage is replenished by getting some carbohydrates before, and then recovery is optimal with carbohydrates, post-workout carbohydrates as well. Any other questions that you guys have that are on the call today? Let me know. But yes, I am also looking forward to having more flexibility in my food intake and bringing my intake up to maintenance. I'll be sharing that process on social media, but also if you guys ever have any questions like beyond this group into January, feel free to ask them. And I wanted to read a couple things that people are struggling with. So I think I will struggle with seeing the scale go up as I shift to maintenance. This can be really challenging, and something that's really helpful for kind of countering that is taking measurements. Take measurements. And then also just logical thinking, like reminding yourself, okay, I'm eating more food, so I have more food in my digestive tract. That is to be expected. That's going to bring the scale up. And then also with that, I'm eating more food, which means I'm eating more carbohydrates. And every gram of carbohydrates equates to 3 grams of water that your body takes in. So if you add 20 grams of carbohydrates, you're getting an additional 60 grams of water. So just thinking of that, like that water weight is going to be in your body, and you're going to see that on the scale. That's actually a really good thing. That's going to help you feel a lot more energy throughout the day and feel better with your training sessions. You're also going to have more glycogen in your muscles, which is also going to be just heavier on the scale. So just knowing as glycogen gets replenished, as water comes up, as you have more food in your digestive tract, the scale is going to come up a little bit. And that is a good thing. That is likely going to be kind of the difference maker for you in feeling really good in maintenance. So embrace it and know that that like 2 to 3 pounds does not equal fat. Give yourself the full 2 weeks to see where the scale is at. Sorry, I've got family coming home, so I'm going to close this door. Give yourself the full 2 weeks so that you can see where the scale is at. Likely it'll come up a couple pounds. It's not gonna like continue to come up and up and up over those 2 weeks. So by about 10 to 14 days, you should see that start to level out, and kind of that'll help you trust the process a little bit more. And then another struggle, calorie consumption when at work due to stress eating. I end up grazing and snacking in between patients. I have little time to eat big full meals with correct macros and trying so hard not to eat all the holiday treats being delivered. I know how to overcome this with pre-planning. Some days it's just hard. Yes, it is hard. And I think like applauding yourself for that and knowing that we only have so much willpower in the day. And so constantly having temptations it's going to make things harder than if it just wasn't there. So some strategies for you. I don't know what type of work you do, but obviously I think medical, maybe a nurse, maybe a doctor, keeping in mind that like maybe just even having a conversation with your colleagues, like, hey guys, does anyone want this out, or can I put it in the fridge, or can I throw it in the garbage? Doing what you can so it's out of sight, because I know for me personally, if I have cake or cookies on the counter, when I walk by, like every single time I walk by those cake and cookies, I have to make the decision to not eat them. And if they're just in the fridge, or if I put them in a bag and I put them in a drawer, like I'm fine. I don't even think about them. So I would say doing what you can to put them out of sight and just letting your coworkers know, like, hey guys, I threw the cupcakes in the fridge or whatever. Like, I honestly think most adults want to feel good, and they're in a similar situation. So if anything, the people that are in your boat will appreciate that. And the people that don't care and want to eat whatever, they can still find it. Like, they'll be fine. So that is something I would consider doing, just moving them out of sight, or maybe even avoiding the room that you know that those things are going to be in for the next 2 weeks, knowing like that is not what I want. If I want to have a special treat, I can get that, but I don't want to just eat it because it's there. Easier said than done, but having some strategies like that can be really helpful. And then for you, as far as like eating just in between patients, that's really hard. Doing what you can, obviously planning is going to be really helpful, but having like vegetables chopped up. Even if that means just like going and getting a veggie tray, a small veggie tray on your way to work with a Greek yogurt, or we just did this yesterday. Not the most tasty option, but I grabbed just we were on the way in between things too, and we could have stopped at like fast food, and the grocery store was just as easy. And we have a great grocery store near us where they have some prepped things. So I just grabbed a couple chicken breasts. Like they just have like the pre-prepped chicken breasts at this grocery store, which not all of them do. Um, and I grabbed cucumber because the chicken was pretty dry, but I just took a few bites of my chicken breast and took a few bites of cucumber. It wasn't like a real meal, but it was real food. And that filled me up a lot more than if I were to just have like a protein drink with some protein powder in it. I could also just like eat that kind of in between things and didn't feel like I needed to heat it up. Granted, some of us are more picky than others, but thinking of food like thinking in terms of like I can just cook up some chicken and I can just eat a chicken thigh in between this patient, and then next patient I can just have some vegetables. And that's not ideal. It's not the same as sitting down and eating a meal, but you're going to be probably a lot more satisfied taking 2 minutes and eating that chicken thigh than chugging just some protein and water, because your body actually has to digest that. So you're going to feel a lot more satiated. So I think mostly just applauding you for doing your best in a hard season. Like there's not going to be hopefully treats at your office all year. And also knowing, like I said earlier, you being intentional and doing your best to be in a calorie deficit right now is allowing you to probably, like maybe you're trying some treats that you aren't planning on having, but if you weren't being intentional in tracking your food intake and doing your best to be in a calorie deficit, you might eat like 6 or 7 of those treats, right? And then feel even worse. So I think remembering like the wins with being intentional and celebrating those too. And speaking of wins, a couple wins, my picks when we began compared to now are much improved, and I'm so happy with my progress. Yay for that. And after a week, and then talking about just getting in more steps, 10 to 20,000 steps a day and feeling good. There as well, after a week-long Thanksgiving trip, not gaining any weight. So huge wins. Super excited for all of you. And let me know if you have questions on anything this week, but we'll plan on doing our call same time next week. So I would love it if you came with whatever questions you have, especially for maintenance. If you're transitioning to maintenance next week, or if you're starting now, please ask questions in the group. We would love to help you through that process. And thank you so much for joining. I hope everyone has a fantastic week, and we will be in touch.